In this video I'm talking about an abstract thinking tool avoiding repetition, and I will use an example from digitalization using computers, internet, websites. So let's imagine that actually it was my example that around 2005 I had a one-page website. So let's say if I want to put the new idea that put the company name, telephone number and address at the bottom. Okay, so I type it one time, so it's just one page. Now let's say I want to add a new page to this one, so I just copy and paste. Now it's very obvious and it's quick and it works okay, except that when you imagine that, let's say I will have 100 pages, so I copy. Now this is one solution, but it's not good, because let's say I copied 100 times in 100 pages, then I find that there is a typo, the telephone number is wrong, so now I have to copy 100 times again. So this is totally waste of time. So the solution is this section should be abstracted. So I create a separate page. I use PHP programming language, and I create one separate document. I put this data there, company name, address, telephone number, only one time. And for each page I insert a link that the server will put this document into that part, at that place in each document. Yes, I have to copy this link to that one page on 100 different pages, but only one time. So if I want to change the address after I already linked, that on that one page, it's called includes in computer programming, I change the address, and because it's linked in all the 100 pages, the information will be updated immediately. So it means that what happens, if you want to generalize this, is that when you have a repetitive job, try to find out what is the common. Actually, everybody does this, that find out what is the common element and don't repeat that one. In programming, there is a principle, there are many principles, but one of them is don't duplicate. So even if you have only just twice the same information, don't copy, because if you want to change one of them, you have to change the other one, and it's total waste of time and can be very confusing. That always abstract, create a new abstract layer, an abstract module, and then make a link. So if you are good at programming, you know this, but if not, the main point in good programming that you create many different layers which represented by links, but then you become very flexible. So what happens in real life, let's say in even old time, when you went to a government office or any institution, that they have a form. Let's say we talk about paper form. So there is a paper and there are some standard text and some dots. You put your data. So these are the variables. So let's say there is a standard contract to rent a flat out. Then you put the name of the tenant and maybe some specific information. So there are two types. One is that either it's total random, so you just put the dots, or maybe there are some pre-selected option, let's say 2 or 3 options, and you can check out. So this is abstraction, because let's say the very first document somebody wrote it down, and probably somebody just copied and changed the data. But if you abstract that fixed information and variable information, then you can abstract the them into two separate things and link them. So you have the fix, the template. So actually there are many different usage in life, like template. Template means that there is a structure and the variable parts you put in. Or standardization. So it can be, this abstraction process can be about processes and procedures, like cooking. So you abstract some element and then you can use it to cook many different type of food, and of course there is a variable part. And it can be a multi-layer structure because, okay, there is fixed element and variable, but the variables can be also, maybe there are only two types, and then you make a solution that you can choose A or B, or maybe, let's say in my websites, I have 4 websites, so I have to, and there is a lot of commonality, and during the years what happened that in this include folder that keeps the fixed parts, there were more and more and smaller units that I built together in different layers, and they were linked that, okay, now bring this document here, and then here bring that document, because sometimes, let's say that I have English language and Chinese language, so I need 2 versions, and then some information is not according to English or Chinese, but for example, put the company address everywhere, but it should be also a variable because separate, because as my first example was, it can change. So the purpose of this type of abstract thinking is to reduce the workload in the long term. So in short term you just copy, but in long term you realize that whatever we do, every part of the life, we find patterns, we find commonalities, and we need to separate that one. For example, let's say how governments work all over the world. They have standardized procedures. So, and these procedures are updated from time to time because world changes. And the main point that they try to, let's say they create a paper or online application form. And then, because they want to know what exists, they give you space to fill out something. No, but the big problem can be that they think that something is fixed, but actually it's not. I give an example that I live in Hong Kong, and in Hong Kong there is no zip code. And maybe not, this is the only place in the world, but in another country where I filled out a form and they ask zip code, I kept it empty or not available, and the computer system rejected that form, and I had a really big problem for a few months, and the stupid administrator started to argue that everywhere in the world there is zip code. I said, no, in Hong Kong, no. And so that person was very stupid, and the people who created this system, that you have to put a zip code, you cannot keep it empty. So that person believed that it is true, so that it can be a fixed element, a zip code required, and if it's not, then it means that it's wrong, the person is lying. Okay, so this is an example that abstracting in a wrong way, believing that fixed in the sense that there must be a data. They didn't, and the data can be different, but the system could not handle that, so they made it mandatory. Okay, that was the problem, that when you abstract, you have to make a decision that do you want to make it mandatory or optional, and they made that element mandatory that we have to put. And of course the solution was I had to go to the consulate. They understand in Hong Kong, and then they gave official documents, and I sent it there, and then they choose to believe, finally, when some very high official person, a diplomat, wrote down that there is no zip code, but when I said, they didn't believe me. So the problem with this abstraction, that you can make mistakes. So that's why you have to involve many different people who have actually brain, and they can understand the world, not just stupid bureaucrats who sit in an office in one small country and they believe that they know everything, or IT people who do this, or the people who give them the instructions. But the main point in abstraction, that we want to avoid repetition, and just copying is not the main point. That we want to be very effective, very efficient, and we have to really know that what is the fixed part, let's say in a contract, and what is the variable part, what is the multiple choice part. Because multiple choice, that it means that they believe that there are, let's say, 3 fixed possible answer, and you can choose only one, or maybe you can choose any number, but they give it. And it also means, so actually bureaucracy is about this, that they have this fixed system, and a lot of times some people have very specific special case, and they don't fit into the system, and then of course they never admit first that they are wrong. They always claim that, hey, you are wrong, you are lying, it's impossible, you cannot do this. For example, I heard an example that a company created a software for the stock market, and everything worked, tested everything, but when they applied this in another country where there was huge inflation, and the price were maybe not just 6-digit maximum, but it was 10 digits, the system collapsed. They could not handle this. Again, the stupidity, ignorance of those people who create this kind of system. So they create a fixed part. Yeah, there is a variable, you can put a number, but the format is fixed. So as an abstraction tool, we want to avoid repetition, and then the solution is that it forces you, actually, that we are very lazy, it forces you to think how to reduce the future workload for this one. Another example, around 14 years ago, I was a chief accountant, and I had a job that at the time we put, it was 24 years ago, 1996, the company paid cash to the people in an envelope. So we have to calculate it, that how many 1,000 banknote, 500, 100, and so on do we need to get from the bank, and what is the minimum of each of them that we can get it, and then put the money in the envelopes. So of course I could use a method that calculate in a very simple way just for this one time, but the main point was that what was next month and after that, every month. So what I did, that I really had to spend a lot of time to figure it out. I used Excel and used formulas, and I make a very simple solution that I put a number, and this column will, let's say, 2, 1,000, 3, 100 banknote, and so on for each of the person, each of the number of the salary, the salary amount. And actually I just update the salary for that month, and the system will automatically calculate everything. So actually the huge benefit of IT technology is abstraction. It reduces time, and you really have to think about this one. For example, in IT, there are many different databases. So you create a software, and you can make it very specific that it works only in one type of database, but it's much better to create an abstraction layer. So an abstraction layer you can see it in computer technology programming is encapsulation, or like a black box that you create an abstraction layer that solves a specific problem. For example, in that case, that a layer that is connected to many different databases, so the programming above that uses the databases don't really have to know what database is used, because this abstraction layer solves it. So you just have connection to this layer, and the layer always handles the specific databases. So as a programmer, you don't have to really know anything, any specific code about those databases. So it's an abstraction layer of handling the specific task. So abstraction layer or an abstract module is like a closed encapsulated black box that somebody is an expert in managing and creating that one, and all the other people, let's say in a software development situation, don't need to know almost anything about how it works. It can be super complicated, it doesn't matter. They only need to know how is it connected. So abstraction, let's say I'm not IT example, let's say how the world really developed in the last 400 years. One element was the division of labor. So let's say 500 years ago, somebody was a shoemaker, and let's say there were 100 different process steps of making a shoe, and then one person was an expert, and that person made all the shoes in the village. Now, so when there were more people, that one person could not be responsible for creating enough shoes, so maybe there were another shoemaker, but both of them were making the same things, everything they did by themselves. And then it's much easier to divide the labor into different functions and get experts who specialize in that one. Now, when you abstract things, the key element is connection, because things interact with each other. So there are different modules, and you have to make it interact with each other very well. It's true for all of the computing examples, and like this shoemaking, that somebody is, let's say, specialized for buying the raw material for the sole of the shoe. So that person become an expert, where to buy it cheap, what is the best material, so they become an expert. And then another one is very good at designing the shape of the shoe. Okay, but and then there are, instead of one person, let's say they're a huge company, there will be 100 people working together. So in this case, we created abstract capsules, abstract modules, abstract layers that I'm an expert in one layer, but I don't really have to know anything about the other layers, other modules. I have to be expert in this one, but I have to make my knowledge or product or this capsule usable for other people, other departments, other people in the workflow. So the connection, like this is a kind of system, because now it's a system, elements have to work together, so you can focus that experts manage the module, the modules or the elements, but then you have to be able to communicate between them. And then it's very interesting, then there is another abstraction a higher level abstraction problem that, let's say, A and B communicate well in the workflow, but then maybe C and B also communicates, but A and so let's say an international company. So there are people from all over the world, and if they have to, each pair of people have to find a common language, let's say German and the French, okay, they can use German. Both of them, they speak German. And also, let's say the German can also speak Japanese and talk in Japanese. But then it's better to create an abstraction layer, let's say one language, that's English. And English is the abstraction layer, the module that each module, everybody has to be able to speak English. So it means that, in this case, the abstraction means that everybody needs a capability to connect to one thing. Actually, the USB port that was created for this one, that all the different equipments could communicate through the USB port, so there is a standardization. So if you look at the history of work and labor and businesses, you see the process of abstraction. In other words, division of labor. People become experts, but it causes a new problem. They have to be able to communicate with each other, exchange money. So then you need to standardize the money market, how to transfer money from different countries, different currency. You have to solve this problem. Yes, then there is a banking system. They solve this problem, so people can. So there is language communication, talking, there is money, there is the goods. You need to standardize, let's say, the law, the legal issues. And for example, the European Union is a kind of abstraction, because they realize that in many countries, so there is one element is flow of things, that free flow of people, money, information, goods. This is one. And the other element is standardization. So in each country they use the same electric power source, 220 volts. Okay, so standardization makes it possible to create one thing, and it can be used anywhere, everywhere. And the other, the communication layer. Okay, so this is abstract thinking in everyday practice. So how to develop this skill? Always think that what is the repetitive things what I am doing. It can be a real life thing, or it can be just information element, or it can be communication element. How can I reduce repetition by abstracting the commonalities, what is common, separate it, but work on the good connection, but not only these two connections, but because it's abstracted, it can be abstracted in many different, it's actually what's happening in the world is abstraction on abstraction on abstraction, more and more specific things. And yes, first it gives a lot of extra job, but in the future it saves a lot of job. So this is one very important element. And for example, that what I mentioned, forms, online or paper forms, anything about standardization, or using formulas, mathematical formulas, or using algorithms. So let's say Google, how do they select who is the first in a search page, who is the first, who is the second? They standardized the process based on assigning different values for different elements. And you know that they have to do it in less than 0.1 second to choose who is the first, who is the second. The only way is standardize the process that worked before, always change the different way of what is important, the keyword or locality, or how many links are there. So, and this helps you that when you take apart a very complex things and focus on modularity, then the interconnection makes it's very important. So it helps you to the individual parts to be an expert, and the connection makes them to interact. So the system works not just as an element. The quality of the whole system doesn't just depend on the elements, experts in a company, but how they are communicating, how they are interacting with each other, because that can be the thing. So when it's one homogeneous thing, there is no communication, or there is an internal, so it's very simple. But when you separate, you have to think about how to interact and how to make the whole system work optimally.